the ballot about me. He'd make up a nickname. I don't have time, right? But unlike, by the way, I always have...
How about Mayor Steve?
Mayor Steve, right. But I don't really have time for this. And so, listen, Donald Trump does the best he can with what he's been given, and it's just not working anymore. Now, it's going to work versus these other people. The other people have a big problem. Everybody running that you know of that is about to run worked for Donald Trump, supported Donald Trump. The governor of Florida supported him. He supported him. Nikki Haley, the whole gang. I'm the only one who can break through that has none of these problems. I was asked to speak for Donald Trump twice in Colorado. And you guys know me, I say yes to every Republican thing. Everything Mike wants to do, I say yes, yes, yes. I said no twice. And both times people were taken aback. One to speak as if I were him and debate the governor, Governor Hickenlooper, and one to do a rally. I said, listen, I would then be telling my children one day that I did this for some short-term gain, that I'd be in the news one day. I don't need to be in the news ever again. And I'm perfectly happy. I don't believe it that he's going to follow through on a lot of these things. And, listen, Donald Trump, how can any Republican, I know there's probably Trump people here, but that means you've ignored $8 trillion of debt. You ignored the $8 trillion. Remember how we were after Obama for $8 trillion of debt, but that took 8 years? Trump did it in 4 years. He wanted more of those negative interest rates, price controls. He wanted negative interest rates. This is bizarro world. It's destroyed the country financially to the point where this is going to get much, much worse. Especially if Janet Yellen keeps telling you from the Treasury everything's okay. That's the worst thing you ever want to hear, right? Everything's fine? You know it's not fine, right? How about just the other day, big banks put in $30 billion to help stabilize one bank? Really? You know how there's $19 trillion of assets in banks? I know billion and trillion. What are they talking about? There is not enough money. How about this guy Vinnick? He wants to go to $10 million in FDIC insurance for every individual, every person. That's insane. There is nowhere near enough money in the FDIC insurance to cover the $250, right? But remember what the Fed did. I hate to always get back to the Fed. Remember what the Fed did. The Fed gave you the greatest bone. They raised the the FDIC insurance on October 13th of 2008 from $125 a person to $250. How many people, you don't have to raise your, how many people have $250,000 in any one bank in your own account? Really? I could drive from here to the Pacific Coast and not meet someone like that. They took away all your interest, 3% on cash, that the normal person said, oh, I'd save a lot of money, got 40 grand, but buy a home, 0, 13 years. And they gave it to rich people. Really? Everybody's okay with that? I'm not. I wasn't then, I'm not now. That has to change. I'm sorry, John Howell.
Mayor, you've had a chance to drive around today. I understand your itinerary really takes you mostly Cranston and Warwick. Coming back, what do you see? What do you see Rhode Island doing, and how would you rate what's happening here?
I don't, John Howell asked me, I've driven around Rhode Island, I don't come back as often as I'd like to, and how does Cranston, Warwick, or the state look from my view? It looks terrible. The roads are in terrible shape. I can't believe driving down, none of this happens in Colorado. Like, I'm sorry, this is a dying industrial state. It's the most wonderful people. I miss everybody greatly. The place is falling apart still. Politically, the whole thing has never changed. In Providence, what happened to Federal Hill? I'm not going there to eat dinner tonight. The whole thing, the graffiti everywhere. You might remember as mayor, I got rid of the graffiti, right? Yep. I spent time, we had cops sitting in bushes. We arrested people. I don't like graffiti, You might remember I picked up all the signs. Every day I had a guy pick up all the signs that said, we buy your homes or whatever, right? They didn't put them down anymore. I had a truck drive around and just pick them up. I did the Fight Blight program. I took down the flags and put up new flags, right? I just don't see it, John. And I feel terrible saying it because, this is my home. This is where I was born, right? It just looks terrible. Just physically, it's old. And physically, and because, as I said many times, because property taxes are 4 times higher here than where I live. The carrying cost for people who are older is too high. It's like the guy who ran for president saying the rent's too damn high. The property taxes force older people to sell their home. They force people not to paint their home because they don't have the money. You know, we're not a right-to-work state. I tried to talk about being a right-to-work state, and you know, because I looked at a map and said, wow, you want a Toyota manufacturing place for cars? Be the only right-to-work state anywhere within 500 miles. No one wanted to do it. That would bring manufacturing jobs. No one wanted to do it. Mayor Cicilline wanted to put like condos on the deepest, closest to England port. The one that made America at the turn of the 1900s the richest place in the world. The richest place in the world was Newport in Providence, Rhode Island in 1900. It was the industrial capital, and it was humming. And since the Great Depression, it's going down. And it hasn't stopped. I hate to even talk about it anymore because it truly bothers me to see it.
All right, this one from Anonymous from the audience. You mentioned you mentioned education, one of your top 5 issues. As president, we've got declining achievement across the country. We've got controversies over divisive curricula and parental rights. What would you do about that, and what is the proper role of the Federal Department of Education?
Well, the proper role of the Federal Department of Education is no role. But look at what happens. You elect a Republican who says that, and they appoint someone to be the head of the Department of Education. They wander around because they're school choice friendly, and nothing changes. I want to be very blunt about this because I don't know if I have the most amount of kids in the room, but I have 6 kids. I have personally educated the last 3 by homeschooling them when my other daughter, Sarah Grace Laffey, came down with stage 4 neuroblastoma. I stopped my life. I did it. I love it. They're here, by the way. Why don't you stand up for a second? These are... Audrey Laffey, and that's Jessica Laffey. In the middle is Stephen Patrick Laffey Jr. And the reason I have a junior is that the older kids were old enough to start to vote. I wasn't going to have a junior, you know? And you have a David and Dave, right? So it was a younger one. So anyway, Peter said, let's have a Stephen Laffey Jr. So we do. So you guys can sit down. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stand up. But I had to homeschool them when my daughter went away. I became radicalized against the public school system in America, not while I was mayor. I sent my kids to public school here because I always was still in that mentality, like I got the bumps and bruises and hanging out, and doing stuff in the playground. And after I got out, my wife says to me, well, I said, what do you want to do? My book's coming out in 07, and she says she'd like to go to Ireland for a couple months. So I said, I'll take the kids out of school, I'll grab some books. This is Sam and Sarah for the most part. And they were 5th and 6th grade, and they knew nothing, and I was ashamed. I was ashamed of myself. I was so busy being mayor, I saw them with some books and so forth. I never sent them back. And I've educated kids in Montessori school, LaSalle, where Peter went to LaSalle when I got custody of them, private schools, homeschool, Veritas homeschool. And I'm just going to tell you right now that the public schools in the United States of America cannot be fixed. They need to be ended over a long period of time. We need to get every parent a check and get every kid out. There are parents like me until 2007 who somehow think that Little House on the Prairie is like still going on, right? The rerun show from the 1800s and 1900s. Or they missed the last 15 years of PTA meetings, but they just really never happened. The ones that happened when I was a kid, when Mrs. Stenhouse was a librarian and would be in the room, right? And Miss Walsh took your job, my favorite teacher, I know that. These were very different meetings. You could remember Mr. Hayes someone saying, I want new drapes over here, and the principal's writing stuff down like you actually care. That's gone. It's over. It will never change, and all we're doing is locking young children into the beginning of the cycle of death. And you've seen these kids. They're not kids, they're 30. They can't make change. You give them a $100 bill, you're looking at it like they've never seen one, number one, and they don't have they're just staring there, they don't know how to make change. You have to tell them how much to give you. This is the failure, and it's not going to change. So what we need to do is have a program. By the way, I'll tell you one last thing. How do you know the federal government really couldn't care less about education? Here's how you know. We have a thing called the internet. We have a wonderfully great teacher. Someone in the United States of America is the best Algebra 1 teacher in the world. Why is he not online for free, teaching every segment of Algebra 1 with videos and so forth? So if your kid missed it, you could go to that website and watch it. Free. So here's the other thing about property taxes. The average person in Providence, I'm just going to make up the number, but I'm not going to be too far wrong, is like $23,000 a kid. I could do it at my house for $2,000, and everybody can do it at their home. Veritas does it for $4,500. The Catholic schools can do it for $8,000. You could go on all day long about who could do it. And the margins, when you're a financial guy, you look for margins. We can drive a truck through these margins. Your property taxes should go down by 50%, and then Rhode Island could compete again, just by getting kids out of the public schools. There was a time and a place for all of this. It ended in like 1976, and it slowly went away, and it's never coming back. And if we don't change it, and I mean now, there's a kid in Detroit who's Steve Lappy. He's a Mike Stenhouse. He can go to Harvard. He's not going. They didn't put him in 7A. They didn't do it. They put him in with a bunch of kids who caused problems. The kids made fun of him on the way home, and he's out dealing drugs. That's what's going on. He's not going to Harvard. It has to change, but nobody running for president will tell you this. What does the good Republican governors tell you? Stop the wokeness. Again, let's stop the wokeness. I get it. That's about 3% of the problem. And let's give the schools some more money so they can, whatever, make sure they have the right books. I don't know. Go look at any budget about textbooks. Go over to Cranston East, I bet you dollars to dozen, John. Go ask for the textbooks of math, get a copy of Catcher in the Rye, get something, and take a look at the missing pages and the doodles in them. And then find out what percentage in Warwick, Rhode Island they spent on textbooks for kids last year. Not that you can't get it online. It's near zero. It's on my website. I say it bluntly. I've got the most kids. I've been the most educated. I've taught the most than anybody running for president, kids and adults at URI. It needs to end, and it needs to end now.
Steve, question.
Yeah.
Are you advocating that parents stay home to educate their children like you